Okay. And I'm Kevin Nelson. I'm here with my aunt, Helen Ormesher. And today is October 7th, 2010. And I've asked Helen to share with me any reflections about my mom, Doris, today. So Helen, if you could just share with me any little stories that you recall about my mom through the years.
Okay.
Sure.
I'll start when we were married, and they were going to shiver yes at the ranch. And Jim bought a lot of candy bars to pass out. And Dory went in. I'll call her Dory because we always did call her
Uh
Dory.
huh. Right.
And Dory went in and got into our candy, and we didn't have very much left for the shivery. But she was awful cute, and I loved Dory from the time I saw her, forever. And I was always so pleased when she would come to my house with her family.
Uh huh.
And she and my little girl just loved Dory. And Dory would ride horseback to the school, and she'd see her walking from the barn, and she'd
Uh huh.
look out the window and she'd say, here she comes,"
Uh huh.
and she'd run and meet her. And from then on, she was with Dory until Dory would leave.
Uh huh.
She just loved her, and she always did.
Uh huh.
And we went to North Platte one time, and Janice, of course, we wanted to see Dory. And we went into the laundry, and the lady says, "You don't need to tell me who you're looking for because you look just like her."
Uh huh.
And she did. She looked an awful lot like Dory.
Uh huh.
And she acted like Dory.
Uh huh.
And I think 'cause they kind of grew up together, I suppose.
Uh huh.
But Dory was my favorite. Always, I loved her. She was kind of like a little sister to me.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
And she used to bring her family and come to my house. And I always enjoyed seeing them come. And I got to meet you little kids, and you were all so cute
Uh huh.
and happy to be there.
Uh huh.
That's what made me happy because they were happy to be there, and so was Dory.
Uh huh.
And I didn't get to see Dory as much as I'd like to when I was growing older because we was always so busy, and the only time I'd see her is if we would go to North Platte or she would come to the ranch.
Uh huh.
But I always have fond memories of her. She was my favorite, one of my favorite persons.
Uh huh.
I really,
Uh huh.
really admired Dory.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the things that she'd like to do as a say a teenager? What were some of her favorite things? Can you remember anything that she particularly liked to
That
do?
I like to do
That my mom liked to do, that Doris liked to do.
when she was a teenager.
Right. Do you recall anything?
Well, she went to high school in Valentine,
Uh huh.
and she was gone most of the week.
Uh huh.
And she usually come home for the weekend.
Uh huh.
And one of the things I really remember was she belonged to Glee Club and Pep Club,
Uh huh.
and they had white blouses. And we lived on the farm, and she would go home to the ranch, and Betty didn't like to have them hang clothes to dry, so they'd stop on the way at our place and leave her clothes, and I would fix them up for her. And I remember their blouses were white linen, and they had ruffles all down the front and lace on the ruffles.
Uh-huh.
And I had a flat iron, and I would iron those blouses. And be sure and get them in this day, Helen, because that's when we'll need them. So I'll hurry up and get them ready and take them to town. But I always thought a lot of Dory. She's my special person.
Yeah. Okay. And what were some of the favorite things that she would do? What were some of her responsibilities on the farm or on the ranch, I should say, and what were some of the favorite activities that she really liked as a little girl? Do you remember any? If you don't, that's fine.
No, because Dory was only 10 when her mother died.
Uh-huh.
and she kind of lived a kind of a lonesome,
Uh-huh.
had
Sure.
a lonesome feeling. You
Right.
know how you'd feel without your mother.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
she was always just more or less just messing around. I remember she had a real cute little red velvet doll, and she'd bring it down for Janice to play with.
Oh.
And I was afraid that Janice would wreck it for
Uh-huh.
her. And
Right.
I always made her to be so careful with that doll.
Uh-huh.
And finally, she gave it to Janice.
Oh,
And
isn't that sweet?
that was the happiest thing in the world.
Uh-huh.
And she really loves Janice.
Yeah.
Awful
Yeah.
good to her, and played with her a lot. And Janice would be so tickled when she'd see her coming. Here she comes, here she comes.
Uh-huh.
So they kind of grew up together.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Dory was, well, of
Can-
course, Bruce and Betty had a house, and she'd go over and visit with Betty and then come back.
Uh-huh.
But I always felt that Dory didn't feel welcome to Betty like she did to me.
Uh-huh.
I always felt that she didn't,
Right.
because she'd always say, I could always go to Helen's house, but she'd never go to Betty's.
Yeah.
But anyway, I always glad to see him coming.
Sure. 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 The what were some of the favorite things that or useful things that my mom used to say or tell you that you found useful or interesting as an adult? Any reflections or opinions or observations that she had that you
we'd go
found pretty
shopping.
interesting?
We'd go shopping when we'd go to North Platte, and we'd shop and shop and shop. Usually didn't buy very much, but we went all over town.
Okay.
And she was always so tickled to see us, and we were tickled to be there too. But and I always felt that Jim was real close to Dory.
Uh-huh.
Of course, Jim was. We were called to the hospital when Grandma was passing away, and she asked Jim to raise the girls and help
Oh,
the
is that right?
little girls, because
Yeah.
see, Dory was only 10.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
so I always thought, and she always told me, Jim is my favorite brother. Bruce was always out with the horses and stuff
Oh,
like
yeah.
that.
That happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
That happens. Yeah.
And it was always whatever Jim thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he always thought so much of the girls.
Yeah.
But and then when Margie left, Dory got lonesome again, because Margie and Dory were awful close.
Yeah.
And her Aunt Margie, no matter what Margie did, that was law and order.
Yeah.
She thought a lot. She
Yeah.
thought a lot of Margie.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Yeah.
so she kind of had a lonely life, really.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting because Mom never described her childhood as lonely. Never to me.
She never did.
She never used that word. She described how she would, in her imagination, she would pretend that while seated on the tractor, she was taking a high-speed train to Chicago, and how right, she would make believe that different parts of the ranch were actually say New York and Miami and on and on and on. So she had the ability to imagine great things, and she described those times of imagination as incredibly delightful. She was completely free to use her imagination without limitation, and she enjoyed that. Yeah, yeah. Real fascinating. You're one of the few people that I've met who knew my grandmother, and I know very, very little about her. And I understand you knew her, and I'm always interested, as my brothers and sisters are, about her, because there's lots about my grandfather, but practically nothing about my grandmother. And any reflections or observations about her?
Oh, she was a wonderful person.
Uh-huh.
Grandma was a wonderful person, very nice and very kind and very good. And but she was heavy,
Uh-huh.
quite heavy. And the funny part of it was she was pregnant and we did not know it.
Yeah.
Nobody knew it.
Right.
And she went to town and he came home and said there was a little boy. And we were all shocked because we did not know it. And
Yeah.
of course she died giving birth to her.
You're right.
So,
Right.
But she was very kind and never ever seemed to get upset. And she idolized Grandpa. He was, well, the kids did too.
When you say her grandfather or
No,
her husband?
her
Ted.
husband.
Ted. Oh, okay.
But the kids did too.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was their dad.
Yeah.
And very seldom would they say anything about their mother.
I see.
But it was Grandpa.
Yeah. His personality was so big he filled up the room.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Grandma wasn't in very good health when we were married. Of course, she was pregnant, and she didn't do anything. And I used to think, oh, mercy, you know.
Yeah. Right.
But she just didn't feel good. That was all.
That's right. And if I believe I'm correct, but I believe she gave birth to, let me see, at least 6 children, and I think there might have even been another that died, but I'm unsure. So it would have been
boy.
6. Let's say it would have been 6, correct? It would have been the 5 surviving, the 2 boys and 3 girls, and then the little boy who did not survive.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and that's out on a ranch. That's a very strenuous life.
Mm-hmm.
To give birth to so many children,
Mm-hmm.
all those months of pregnancy, plus all the physical responsibilities of keeping the meals prepared and all the cleaning done and so forth. Yeah, so I imagine she had a huge number of responsibilities.
Oh, she did.
Yeah.
She was awfully good to me.
Uh-huh.
I really liked her.
Do you remember anything she used to say, or that has kept with you, or sometimes there's the different things that people will say that you remember later on.
Well,
Is
I
that
don't
the case?
remember what she said, but I remember what Grandpa said.
Uh-huh.
And there was a song that Heartache was the name of the song. Maybe you remember that. Heartache.
I bet if I heard it, I would recognize it.
And
But
anyway, Grandpa says he should sing that song to Jim because she's a little heartache, but she has a lot of fun. I'll never forget that. He says, Jim should say, call her a heartache, but I thank her for what she has done. That's what Grandpa would say.
Yeah.
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 He was quite a guy.
Yeah.
He had quite a family. I don't know how you put up with all of us, but he did.
Yeah. Well, good. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I don't know. I think Dory had a very nice family, and I was awful glad that you could come and see me.
Okay. And lastly, of course, you'll be waiting breathlessly for Jana, Locke, Chris, and Dory to come visit. And, and it's they need to make it very soon.
Oh, that would be great.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.